Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Darren, and this is another week of CC Edit Lab Edit with me. Basically what it is one of the photographers in our Discord community will share a raw image, a raw file, and then we'll all just take that raw file and go edit it in our own way, and then we just compare at the end and see how differently one image can look from person to person. And yeah, it's really cool and inspiring to see how one image, the same image, can look completely different. And we learn so much about what you can do and how you can do things differently and how you can view things differently. We all view the same image in different ways. So yeah, it's really cool. If you'd like to be a part of that, feel free to check out the description below. There's a link in the description for our Discord server in the link tree, and join the community, grow, inspire, and just take part in pretty cool challenges and conversation. So yeah, link in the description, check that out. So let's get editing. I'll see you guys in Lightroom. Okay guys, we're here in Lightroom with another pretty awesome image that Antonio took in Turkey. So let's dive in, let's get at it. Okay, cool, so let's go with the usual, all the way down, optics, enable lens corrections and remove chromatic aberration. As Antonio explained last week, chromatic aberration is sometimes you'll see a green or purple like tinge around the ends of objects or sharp contrasts. So yeah, that's just a standard thing I do. Okay, so if it's landscape, I like to choose the landscape profile by Adobe. Just brightens things up and makes them a little bit more saturated, the blues and the greens. Cool, so this image is taken at dusk, I think, with all the cool hot air balloons behind. So I think I want to boost the exposure a tad, but you'll see that might blow out the sky. So let's reduce those whites and bring back some of the blacks. Do I want to open up the shadows? I think I'll use a layer mask. Reduce some of the highlights. And let's see what happens if I go all the way with the contrast. So you see that if I reduce the contrast, the subject becomes pretty in focus. So what we're going to do is, let's put this where it is, and what I'm going to do is go straight to select subject. Works out really well. Reduce the contrast on the subject, increase some exposure there somewhat, open up the highlights a very little bit, blacks, make the whites a little bit stronger. Don't need to worry so much about shadows. Cool, and saturation just a touch, and then we go back in here. Cool, we can drop the exposure a little bit more. I think let's go attend to that mask somewhat and open up that exposure a little bit more. Reduce that contrast. Cool. So, and then I like to go into the point curve and just add in an S curve. So let's see what it does if I bring this down. That looks pretty neat. Bring that up. So I want to make the skies a little bit more vivid, and I think I want to brighten the bottom half of the image, the shadows a little bit more, bring them up a touch, and maybe let's see if I flatten out, crush the blacks. Nah, it's going to flatten the image. Cool. So I want to add a bit more blues in the mids and highlights. So I'm going to boost that up a bit here for the sky and bring them down along the shadows, the darker areas, so along the ground, and also some reds. You can see there's a bit of red or orange in the sky, so I want to really try and make that pop. So you can see that's doing a great deal, and if I bring it down here, that will just keep it in the sky, maybe a little bit too much because we got some in the sand as well. Although I think the sand is more like a pinkish. Cool, and I think also let's add a little bit of green back to the grass. So you can see just how drastically that changes just from doing that little bit. The point curve is really strong. Bring this, and if we just go, that's the original, that's the image now. And okay, cool, so let's go to color, bring up the saturation a touch. Okay, and what I want to do is add another layer mask, a linear gradient, just from here to, I just want to decrease the feather a little bit more, and I want to just adjust a little bit, so we'll reduce the exposure of the ground a touch, although that also reduces the exposure in the brush. So what we're going to do is just subtract, use a brush, and just brush away that on the dress. Just brush it away so that it's not in the linear gradient. Whatever I do to the linear gradient won't affect. And this is also something I learned from Antonio, so check out his video if you can. So there we go, we're done. Let's go back to the mask, and now we can reduce the exposure, and you can see it doesn't affect the dress, his wife Gracie, at all. Cool. So let's see here just how drastically it changes, just removing or including a lot more highlights. So I think let's do a little bit more there. I kind of want to dull it out so that she's in focus, and just deepen the blacks a little bit. That adds a lot more contrast to the ground. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do another mask, and this time select the sky. And Adobe is really good in just, so we're going to reduce those highlights a little bit more, open up the shadows, because that will help us with the balloons to stand out. Increase the whites a touch and remove the blacks, although it's looking a little bit more like too overcast now. Cool, and I think I want to remove the change the temperature of the day, the color. Reduce clarity, but increase the texture. So now just moving dehaze a touch. Watch the clouds. Look how super dramatic that looks. That looks cool, just with adding a bit of dehaze. And dehaze is really powerful. So I think though, if you look at the image, it's a bit too blue. It looks like stormy. So let's go into color and let's change those blues a touch. If we, okay, that's a bit much. Reduce the saturation of them. Open up the luminance. Here we got this pink and orange golden hues coming through, so we want to try just decrease that a touch, and the pinks are quite strong. That's without them, and that's if we bring them up a touch. Cool, let's go back and check before and after. Cool, but I think we need to add a little bit of a radial mask around the subject as well, because a radial gradient. Because, and if we just do this and put it here around Gracie, and then we just want to decrease the contrast a little bit and whiten it up a touch. And although we could have actually inverted, so there we go, just to draw her eye. So we're gonna increase the contrast. So watch the edges of the photo as I slide the contrast up. You'll notice that they kind of just lead you towards Gracie a little bit more and reduce the exposure there somewhat. Cool. Let's just go in here and see. I think let's bump up the clarity a little bit here of the overall image and the texture, because this is a very textured image. Okay, don't want to play around too much with the dehaze. We've already added a vignette. And just sharpen the details a touch. Oh yeah, I think I'm happy with the edit. Maybe there's a bit too much color over here, I think. So let's see if we go to the sky, reduce those contrasts a touch, and remove the highlights and the shadows and the whites. I think let's keep them quite white. Just drop down the saturation. Okay. And the sharpness. Cool. Bring the temperature a little bit closer. There we go. I think now I'm a bit happier with how that is. Although I think, let's see here, I think Gracie can stand to be a little bit more exposure on Gracie. Before, after. Okay, and that's the edit. Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. It's very dramatic, and he was saying that the weather was a little bit inclement there, so I mean it's not a beautiful sunny day, but I think it's nevertheless a really cool photo with the hues in the sky and the balloons. And there we go. Thanks for joining, guys, and yeah, be sure to check out Antonio's edit